Who is piloting the UAPs or UFOs constantly seen in our skies? Where are they from? Why are they here? How long have they been here? What is their mission on planet Earth? Do they come in peace or do they have more sinister motives? Join your host, Mad Mark, as he uncovers the answers to these questions and many more of the mysteries that have puzzled mankind for centuries on Who Are the Aliens? The history of the Anunnaki on planet Earth. And now, here's Mad Mark. Today's episode, the true story of Sodom and Gomorrah.
We interrupt our regularly scheduled program for an update and important information regarding the Comet 3I Atlas that is fast approaching Earth. We will return to our previously scheduled topic on our next episode.
Okay, if you say so. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Who Are the Aliens? The history of the Anunnaki on planet Earth. I'm Mad Mark, and before I begin, just a reminder to please like, share, and comment. It helps so much. Okay, today we continue our studies of Zecharia Sitchin's third book, The Wars of Gods and Men, published by Avon Books in 1985. Well, it's been all over the news. We've all heard about it. The object approaching Earth, known as 3I Atlas. Is it an alien invasion? Is it the return of the Anunnaki? Or is it just a comet? At the time that this episode airs, it will be very close to Earth, so I think it's important to talk about it. Let's weed through all the speculation and see if we can figure this thing out logically. So, what do we know about 3I Atlas, and why has it been so prominent on various newscasts now for months? Well, that is partly due to theoretical physicist Avi Loeb, who claims, quote, "It moves on a trajectory that is very unusual. It is aligned with the orbit of the Earth around the Sun, and it will get extremely close to the inner planets, like, for example, Jupiter, Mars, or Venus. It will arrive closest to the Sun when the Earth is on the opposite side, so we won't be able to look at it. And that's the point where a spacecraft could make a maneuver to slow down. And it's coming from the direction of the Milky Way galaxy, the center of the Milky Way galaxy, where the sky is very crowded with stars. So that's why it took a while to notice it. And altogether, the chance of this trajectory is less than 0.2% to be aligned with the orbit of the Earth around the Sun, less than 1 part in 20,000 to arrive so close to the other planets, and one wonders, could it be a design trajectory? And I'm not saying that we know, but I'm saying that we need to collect more data to figure out the nature of this object. And if it turns out to be a comet, if it's surrounded by a beautiful cometary tail that is glowing in the sunlight as it gets closer to the sun, so be it. But my point is, we should check whether any of these objects might be technological in origin, because it's a security risk to Earth. Okay, that's interesting enough. But it should also be noted that Dr. Loeb is considered to be, shall we say, a bit fringe by his colleagues. Now, that fact in and of itself is fine. People like myself who talk about the Anunnaki are considered fringe by many people. In fact, since the dawn of time, anyone who thinks outside the box has been considered fringe. So I don't believe that we should discard what he has to say simply because he's considered fringe. But could there be more to this story? Could governments use this information in a negative way? And that brings us to Project Bluebeam. What is that, you may ask? Well, some people claim that it's just another governmental conspiracy theory. But is it? To really understand it, I think we need to go back to the beginning, way back, to before I was even born. We've all heard of the Roswell incident, right? the alien craft that crashed outside of Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. Okay, shortly after that, in 1954, it has been alleged that U.S. President Dwight D. Eisenhower had a series of secret meetings with the extraterrestrials. And what was discussed in those meetings? I believe it was the first time that leaders of countries, at least the most powerful countries on Earth, were briefed about the situation of what is really going on here on Earth and who is really in charge. I wouldn't be surprised if the leaders of Russia and China at that time didn't have similar experiences. The theory claims that the topics discussed were as follows. We would keep the alien presence on Earth a secret. They would furnish us with advanced technology and would help us in our technological development. They could abduct humans on a limited and periodic basis for the purpose of medical examination and monitoring of our development, with the stipulation that the humans would not be harmed, would be returned to their point of abduction, that the humans would have no memory of the event, and that the alien nation would furnish MJ-12 with a list of all human contacts and abductees on a regular scheduled basis. And that part has never been done. It was agreed that each nation would receive the ambassador of the other for as long as the treaty remained in force. It was further agreed that the alien nation and the United States would exchange 16 personnel each to the other with the purpose of learning about each other's cultures. The alien guests would remain on Earth, and the human guests would travel to the alien point of origin for a specified period of time, then return, at which point a reverse exchange would be made. However, there are no records whatsoever of whatever happened to those original 16 humans who left the Earth with the aliens. It was also agreed that bases would be constructed underground for the use of the alien nation, and that 2 bases would be constructed for the joint use of the alien nation and the United States government. The base at Dulce is one of those. The base at S4 in the area known as Area 51 or Dreamland is the second. Exchange of technology would take place in the jointly occupied bases. These alien bases would be constructed under Indian reservations in the 4 corners of Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona, and 1 would be constructed in Nevada in the area known as S4, located approximately 7 miles south of the western border of Area 51. All alien areas are under complete control of the Naval Department, and all personnel who work in these complexes receive their checks from the Navy. Construction of the bases began immediately, but progress was slow until large amounts of money were made available in 1957, and in the meantime, work continued on the Yellow Book with the information derived from the guests. Sources go on to say that the popular 1977 film Close Encounters of the Third Kind was basically true. Those events did take place, just not exactly as you saw them, and not at Devil's Tower. But there was a landing, there was an agreement, there were conversations, and there was an exchange of personnel made. This is important on so many levels that I can't count them all, but it all leads us up to the government's current status regarding UFOs and UAPs. It took them long enough to come clean about what they know, but they are slowly opening up. Case in point, at the SALT Eye Connections Conference in May of 2024, Colonel Carl Neal publicly conveyed information regarding the government's knowledge of UFO intelligence. The colonel stated that, quote, "So non-human intelligence exists. Non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity. This interaction is not new, and it's been ongoing. And there are unelected people in the government that are aware of it. And how can the folks in the audience come to the common understanding of what this phenomenon is? Well, there's two tracks here. One is from first principles, and another is actually from the data. So let's look at the data. So we can look at some folks that have very high level access to information, like Paul Hellyer, who was the defense chief for Canada. He has come out and said the same thing. We can look at Ham Eshed, the former head of Israel's Space Force. He has said the same thing. Chris Mellon, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Intel SAPCO, has essentially said the same thing. Lou Elizondo has said the same thing. David Grush has said the same thing. David Grush cleared for presidentially leveled material. So you're looking at people that are in a position to know this, and they're telling you the same thing. You could take a look at the Gang of Eight in the Senate and in Congress. So there's two members of the Gang of Eight, Marco Rubio and Senator Chuck Schumer, that signed up to the UAP Disclosure Amendment last year that basically said they're not being told the truth and we need to push forward on that. So that's sort of an overview of some of the data, end quote. But why is it important to understand this backstory of alien interaction with humanity? Why have I brought all this up today? Because we have to understand the past if we are going to move ahead with the future. Now, this next part may seem a little hard to believe, but I swear to you that it is true. I have never lied to you on this program, and I'm certainly not going to start now. Hey gang, Mad Mark here to let you know that I now have new t-shirts available for my show, Who Are the Aliens? The History of the Anunnaki on Planet Earth. You can find these cool new shirts by searching Who Are the Aliens shirts on Amazon or by clicking the link on my website at madmarktv.com. They are available in a variety of sizes and colors with delivery through Amazon, a name you know and trust. That's the all-new Who Are the Aliens t-shirts, just like the one you see me wearing right here. Get yours now. I have talked many times on this show about the craft I saw at very close range when I was about 10 years old. That sighting started my search to find the truth, and I have also mentioned many times that for the next 20 years or so, information on UFOs was very hard to come by. I was basically limited to library books and UFO documentaries on TV, and let me tell you, in the 70s, there was a ton of them, and I watched every single one that I could. But one of them always stood out in my mind. It was around 1975, and it was towards the end of the program, and this man was being interviewed. He was supposedly from the government, and they had him sitting in the dark, and they changed his voice to hide his identity, and he made the statement that right now, America's main threat is the Soviet Union, which was true. But soon, it will switch to Muslim extremist terrorist groups. And finally, once that threat has grown old, there will be an alien attack from space concocted by the U.S. government. I have never forgotten that show. I wish that I could remember the name of it. I have searched YouTube and Google, where many of these old shows can still be found, and I can't find it anywhere. But that information has stayed with me for my entire life. And sure enough, a few years after I saw that, we began hearing about militant Muslim terrorist groups. A little at first. Obviously, the Soviet threat didn't actually go away until the Berlin Wall came down in 1989. Although it seems to have resurfaced again here in recent years. But it grew and grew, and for the past 30 years or so, it has dominated the headlines. And all the while, I was thinking back to what I heard on that old TV show in 1975, and now suddenly, our government is starting to open up about UFOs, and at the same time, we are starting to hear rumors of something called Project Bluebeam. Could a concocted alien attack from space, like the one predicted on that 1975 UFO documentary, be far away? Is that what is coming? In May of 2001, a press conference was held at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. Dr. Carol Rosen was a chief speaker at that conference. She was the first female corporate manager of Fairchild Industries, as well as the founder of the Institute for Security and Cooperation in Outer Space. She has testified before Congress on many occasions, and she was spokesperson for Wernher von Braun during the last years of his life. If you don't know who Wernher von Braun was, he was brought to this country at the end of World War II. He had been the technical director of the German Army's rocket development program, and he was largely responsible for the development of the U.S. ballistic missile and space programs in the 50s and 60s. At this 2001 press conference, Dr. Rosen stated that, quote, Wernher von Braun was sitting at a desk when I first met him, explaining to me that he had only 3 to 6 weeks to live, but that he was going to stay alive long enough to teach me what the real game is that's going on. And it started out when I was in the industry. The Russians were the threat. We had to build space-based weapons against the Russians. And then third world countries and terrorist groups took over as America's main threat. And that leads us to the last card. And then he would repeat to me over and over, and the last card, the last card. The last card would be the extraterrestrial threat. He explained to me that there was a moment when we were going to be told that the extraterrestrial beings and their craft were a threat when they were not. These craft that have come here are now not UFOs. They are identified flying objects, and we know that they have beings in them. And we have witnesses here who have told you that they can shut down our missile silos. They can stop a rocket going into space. That's a test. We have witnesses here who have worked in the classified departments, who have the courage to come forward here to support what Wernher von Braun told me from 1974 through 1977. At the end, I said, and it's all a lie. Well, it's still all a lie. The ultimate dream of the dialectical war machine, the military-industrial complex, is to have this war with a potential extraterrestrial civilization. It's their dream of all time. You know, you can roll into place all of the kind of structures of a national security state. You can spend literally trillions of dollars a year on massive military equipment, super high-tech equipment, etc. And it's so logical that they would use that as an excuse. Flashback to September 11th, 2001. The world is in shock. The American people are paralyzed with fear and grief. Over the next few days, an unprecedented show of solidarity and patriotism. Americans fly their flag from every car and hang them outside their homes. They unify around an overwhelmed president brought together as one by terror and loss. Few raised an eyebrow as constitutionally protected freedoms disappeared and the war drum beat loud and unopposed. The 9/11 attack set the stage for an invasion agenda that had been pre-planned for years, as General Wesley Clark revealed in a 2007 interview. He said, "I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today. And he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off with Iran." I said, "Is it classified?" He said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Well, don't show it to me." When von Braun talked to me about this faked alien invasion that was being planned, I saw on a board a list of countries against whom we were going to build space-based weapons. I called Wesley Clark, and he answered the phone. And I said, "Well, you know, what is it about?" And he said, "Well, I asked that question. What is it about?" And the guy at the desk said, "I don't know." I said, "We're going to war with Iraq? Why?" He said, "I don't know. It's in a paper published in 2000, Rebuilding America's Defenses, the neoconservative think tank project for the new American century, asserted that only a, quote, new Pearl Harbor would generate the political will for the military and defense policy transformations that this group desired. Indeed, these traumatizing events are always planned or hijacked in order to manipulate perception and manufacture consent for military action and the theft of our wealth and liberty. George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, and others had decided to go to war with Iraq long before Colin Powell gave that presentation. I feel like it was the lowest point in my professional and personal life that I had a hand in managing it. But we've come a long way since the 9/11 attacks. That same document that called for a new Pearl Harbor goes on to describe how we need to put weapons in space and even predicts the creation of the Space Force. For a complete fascist takeover, the men behind the curtain will have to play their final card, a cosmic 9/11, this temptation to generate a false flag attack on the part of some extraterrestrial civilization. You even heard people like Ronald Reagan make reference to it. Remember, he said, perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bond. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside of this world. End quote. Wow, I remember that speech. It all makes perfect sense now. They were setting all of this up even during the Reagan years, getting us ready and planting the seeds. Researcher Jeremy Corbell is one of the people working hard to get the word out about this great deception. In a recent appearance, he stated, quote, "So UFOs are real, and they've been here a long time, and that's the truth. But the lie is coming. All indications, like all of them, is that that lie is going to be that there is a craft slowly making its way to us here on Earth. And that is the lie they're going to want you to believe. It's nuanced, how they explain the nature of that threat. But that 100% is the lie you are going to be told. You've even got a date. People have been whispering a date for a long time now. I know where that lie comes from. I know specifically what document from the 70s initiated the idea of that lie. A classified document. That is the lie you will be told." End quote. So, now that we know the truth, let's see how all of this ties together. What is this great deception known as Project Bluebeam, and what exactly do we need to be aware of and prepare for? Are the Anunnaki preparing to make themselves known again? Are they ready to come out of the shadows and reveal themselves for the first time in centuries? Some people refer to it as the return of the Anunnaki, but as I've proven time and time again on this program, they never actually left. They simply disappeared into the shadows, into secret bases around the globe that our government has known about and in some cases helped to build since the Eisenhower presidency in the 50s. Well, if they are about to reveal themselves, then one thing is for certain. They are not going to attack us or try to destroy us. They created us. And if they wanted us gone, they could have done that years ago, centuries ago. No, they have far too much time and energy invested in humanity to do something like that. If and when they do decide to reveal their existence, it will be a peaceful interaction. So, if you turn on the news at some point over the next couple years and see reports of an alien attack from space, it is Project Bluebeam, so don't believe it for a second. No matter how realistic it seems, no matter how much you want to believe it, don't. It's all B as in B, S as in S. They will probably use drones. They will probably utilize advanced holographic technology. And they will undoubtedly deploy the crafts that they have been back engineering from actual downed UFOs for decades. It will appear to be real, but it is the Great Deception. So how does 3I Atlas fit into all of this? Maybe it does, and maybe it doesn't. Perhaps it's just a comet making its way through our solar system and nothing more. Could it be the Anunnaki mothership? Perhaps, but we won't know that until it gets here. But remember, If the governments of the world claim it is attacking Earth, or for that matter, if they ever claim that we are under attack from space, it is bullshit, plain and simple. Don't believe a word of it. Okay, well, I know that at the end of the last episode, I promised you that I was going to begin discussing the calamity, the great calamity, that caused the majority of the Anunnaki to flee from planet Earth, and I will. But with 3i Atlas making headlines and physicists such as Avi Loeb suggesting that it could be more than just a comet, well, I thought that I should address it on this program. It will be nearing Earth over the next few weeks, and that makes it a timely subject. But since I have a short amount of time left in this episode, I will begin discussing the events leading up to the Great Calamity, and then I'll finish it up over the next episode or two. So, upon reading ahead in this book, as I normally do, I noticed a couple of things. First of all, this is the version of the story of this calamity as it was written basically from the human point of view. And a lot of behind-the-scenes facts were left out, information that the humans were not privy to. Things like how the Anunnaki could have been so naive about the actual devastating power of these nuclear-type weapons that they unleashed, because it totally caught them by surprise. And, secondly, how did Enlil's sons Ninurta and Nergal acquire these bombs in the first place? And I know that Inanna Ishtar was involved in this also, and she is basically overlooked in this version of the story. I believe that the version of the story that I'm thinking of, the version told from the Anunnaki perspective, was actually in the Book of Enki, the book where Enki actually sat down with a scribe and documented the entire story of his life on Earth. But of course, that is biased because it is told from the perspective of Enki and his clan. But Enlil never actually documented his version of Anunnaki history on Earth. So, Enki's version is basically all that we have. But I distinctly remember the Anunnaki version of this story of the devastation of Sodom and Gomorrah and the spaceport in the Sinai, which in turn led to the ruination of much of the Middle East, as being much more in-depth and informative. So, I will begin discussing these events on the next program, which will conclude the book we have been discussing, The Wars of Gods and Men. And after that, I will start up on the Book of Enki, and we will all learn about the entire history of the Anunnaki from Enki's point of view. Because, as I said on my very first episode, I know this information because I have read all these books before in the past, but that was 30 to 40 years ago. So I am rereading them now and sharing it all with all of you so that we can all learn together the true history of our planet. And again, I apologize for getting off track on this episode, but with 3i Atlas quickly approaching and everyone speculating and talking about it, I thought it was important to address it on this episode, so that all of you could understand what may really be going on here and preparing for it. And that is where I will leave you for this episode. You have quite a lot to digest there, and we have so much more to cover and learn. I'm Mad Mark, and I sincerely hope that you've enjoyed this episode. Please like, share, and comment. It helps so much. And also, tell your friends and help spread the word about this program. Also, if you have any questions regarding the content discussed on this show, just message me through madmarktv.com or on any of my social media platforms. I also wish to remind everyone that listening to this podcast is no excuse to not be reading the book that we are discussing here, The Wars of Gods and Men by Zecharia Sitchin. It is an amazing work, and I am leaving out much of the information in order to keep the show flowing properly. So please do yourselves a favor and read that book. Who Are the Aliens? The History of the Anunnaki on Planet Earth is written and produced by me, Mad Mark. All media used in this episode is done so under the protection of fair use for the purposes of teaching. Today we have taken another step in our ongoing journey to find the truth. I promise you that things will get more and more interesting the further we delve into this topic of who are the aliens, the history of the Anunnaki on planet Earth. Bye for now. This has been Who Are the Aliens? The History of the Anunnaki on Planet Earth with your host, Mad Mark. Join us again on our next program when Mad Mark will once again uncover the answers to more of the mysteries that puzzle mankind.